And Mychal, I'm so excited to get this time with you. Welcome in. And so for everyone who's joining, Mychal was one of the very first teachers we invited to be a part of Inner Dimension when we first founded Inner Dimension TV. And we knew that we were going to be bringing teachers on, and we knew from the start that we wanted Mychal to be one of those instructors. I think Mychal has more certifications than anyone I have ever met. And I have been lucky enough to have Mychal in my life as a friend, as a student, but also as a teacher of mine. I trained with Mychal before my pregnancy, throughout my whole pregnancy. I can definitely say that my time spent in friendship and in working closely with Mychal is one of the reasons that I know I'm an athlete today, and I am as strong as I am. So there's so many things that Mychal brings, just who he is as a person. And when you meet him in person, the one thing you will learn is that, first of all, no one gives a better hug than Mychal. And just be ready, because it's a long hug. So if that makes you uncomfortable, you're going to get out of your comfort zone, because he's going to give you a long hug until your cup is full. And then you will release that embrace. But Mychal, welcome. And I would love just to give you the opportunity to start by sharing your story. You know, how did you get here? How did you end up in a yoga class? You have had a physical relationship to your body. You are someone who, it seems like from a very young age, was in his body, using your body in all sorts of different ways. And you've had a real embodied journey. And I think, you know, that's different than some people. You know, some people come to the practice like I did because we were so in our heads that we needed to get into our bodies. But your body has been a conduit for expression throughout the course of your life. And I think it would be really exciting for people to hear from you what that journey has been and how it's evolved. And I know for myself, I have really gotten to witness your ongoing evolution and how that's even shifting today in this moment in time. So take us on your journey.
Yeah. With pleasure. Thank you for the intro. And it's been so sweet to be able to be on this journey with each other, and to be teachers and students of each other from, you know, years ago, and doing the training and personal training and the teacher training in Spain, and all of that. And just for the last, 8 years of, I think, us and Travis knowing each other have been. So first of all, I want to say thank you to you, and thank you to Travis for just having such a huge impact on my life, and Inner Dimension TV as well. It's such an honor and a pleasure to have been asked. I was shocked and stunned in a really beautiful way when that ask happened. I was like, wait, what, who, me? So thank you for those seeds that you guys have planted, and that we planted so many years ago. Because it's beautiful to see how they have sprouted and are continuing to sprout. And my journey, I mean, I feel like, like you said, I've been somebody who's loved moving in my body since the time that I was born. I was always playing sports since I could remember, playing basketball and football. And I mean, my favorite class growing up in school was PE, because I got to play. And I didn't like coming back in from PE, because I just always had, like, that's when I felt my best, was when I was moving and running and jumping and, you know, doing all the athletic things that I was. And so when, you know, throughout high school I was playing football, and when I was trying to figure out college situation, it was like, all right, I'm either going to go to school to play sports, or I'm going to go to art school, because I was also very much into art. And I made that decision at that crossroad to pursue movement and sports. And so when I got into college, it was just this debate of, like, I feel like it was always such a big thing, like, all right, what are you gonna study when you get into college? And for me, that decision, thankfully, was a bit easier than probably for most. So it's like, oh, well, what am I interested in? Really, I'm like, okay, I'm interested in kinesiology. I'm interested in athletic training and those kind of things. And so that was what I decided to pursue while I was going through school and playing. And even before, like right before going into college, like I've shared, I think on that and the interview with the intervention that we've done, that my dad took me to my first yoga class when I was 18, when I was still in high school. And thankfully he had friends that were yoga teachers. And so we went to one of their classes, and remember being in that class and just feeling challenged and also feeling confident, but also at times feeling like it was a struggle. So it was like this really sweet balance of like, oh, I'm good at this, but at the same time, like, oh, this is really challenging. And so I think that's what really kind of caught my attention and caught my interest and curiosity at a young age with yoga, because it was something that was, that I felt pretty confident in, but also it was like, oh man, I could see where there are areas in my body that were it's like, man, I wish I could be a bit more flexible, and I didn't really know too much about the benefits of the practice back then, but it was something that I decided to pursue throughout college as I was playing football. That was more like Bikram style classes, because a girl that I was dating at the time was really into Bikram classes, so we would go. And then once I was done with football and done with school and landed at Equinox where we met, I made it a New Year's resolution. I think this is the only New Year's resolution that I've ever made. So I'm like, I'll make resolutions, whatever I want to make them. It doesn't have to be on New Year's, but for this one particular year I did, and it was to take 2 yoga classes every week for the rest of the year. And I was really, really good about that. And so I got to take a variety of different classes with different teachers. And immediately, like probably weeks into it, but definitely months into it, I started to notice just how much more open my body felt and how much more space I felt like there was for me to move in my body. And I really felt that when I was doing my strength and conditioning kind of training and weightlifting training, because it was just like, oh my gosh, there's so much more range of motion in my joints. And I was just even more attracted to it. And then I was probably telling so many people like, oh, you got to go to yoga if you train. Like, guys, go to yoga because you're going to be able to expand on your weightlifting capabilities even so much more. And then I started to realize that, I started to get like little hints at like, okay, it's deeper than the physical practice though, but it just kind of scratched the surface a little bit. I still wasn't too aware of that, but I could also feel that I was just a little bit more in tune with my body. And I think probably a bit more empathetic as well. And then Adam, our dear friend Adam Rosenthal, who I was living with at the time, he kept telling me about your yin class, your candlelit yin class on Friday night, and he had been telling me about it for weeks. And finally, I decided, I was like, all right, this is the Friday that I'm going to go. And that class, and I know I've shared this story with you too, but like that class just really, really changed my life. Like that was the one big domino that, like, after that landing, it just triggered so many more beautiful events. And that was the first time that I'd ever experienced a class like that. I didn't know yin was a type of yoga practice. I had no idea. And for me, it was really confronting, not so much physically. It was a little bit physically, but also mentally, because I felt like that was the first time where I really had to and was being asked to be still and be super present in my body without being distracted by anything else besides, thoughts. But it was a really beautiful, I look back on that class and just like, oh my gosh, what a really beautiful reflection of like the conversations and what was going on in my mental body, not just my physical body. But I remember leaving that class and literally felt like you were speaking to me in that class. Like it was just like you were talking directly to me. It was like everything that I needed to hear and feel. It was just like, like you're speaking to my soul. And I left that class just feeling like on cloud 9, like I'd never felt before, and just so relaxed as well. And it was just like, wow, it just really, really opened my mind in a beautiful way, and definitely opened my body too. And then we started working together shortly after that and having more conversations around yoga. And then that eventually led to the 200-hour teacher training that I did with you and Travis in Spain, which like that was one of the most like pinnacle moments and decisions in my life, because I feel like the time that was spent there in that teacher training was like, that was really the first time in my life that I got to, it was almost like an extended version of a yin practice. Like I got to be with myself. I didn't know really anybody else besides you and Travis, and got to know other people, but like it was really me with me in my body and being supported by the full 8 limbs of yoga, right? Not just the asana, which was what I was used to more so, but everything else. And that was my first time really getting to take a deep dive and really steep in the other limbs, which was just like, again, that was just like mind blowing. And for me, after that, that was when I really started to not just like realize, but feel in my body that like, oh, this is so much deeper than just the physical practice. And, you know, coming back from that teacher training and then starting to teach in LA at the Yoga Collective and subbing for Travis at Power Yoga. And that was just like this, created this really beautiful snowball effect. And so it was really cool to just see the trajectory of everything when I look back on it, because, you know, if you would have asked me at the beginning of my time at Equinox as a personal trainer, if I would have thought about teaching yoga, or if I could see myself as a yoga teacher, I probably would have said no, because I didn't see that in my future. It wasn't something, I like taking yoga, but I didn't see myself as a yoga teacher. And that's kind of like, I think a lot of us deal with that, or confronted with that kind of like imposter syndrome sometimes of like, oh, who, you know, that was my conversation. Like, who am I to teach yoga? You know, yeah, I take it regularly, but like, who am I to teach? And then once we got started with the teacher training, I was like, oh my gosh, yes. And it just felt so good. And I kept following those threads of just like, yes. And, you know, and here we are now. And I am so grateful to be able to say that I've been teaching yoga since, you know, 2017. It honestly feels like I've been teaching my whole life. And I love sharing this message with yoga people, especially people who were like myself in my early 20s or as a teenager, who might not be so attracted to it, or think that it was more of like a feminine type of practice, you know, or that like, oh, I can't do yoga, yoga's for girls kind of thing, like how I used to think when I was younger. But I love being able to share my story with people and just spread this message of yoga. And also more so what I'm finding more recently is spreading the message that it's also a lot more than just the asana practice, you know, because especially here in the West, I think most of us, when we think of yoga, we think of being in a studio and downward dogs and those kind of things, but it's so much deeper than that. And that's what I've really fallen in love with, especially after reading, you know, books about the sutras and all of that. I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is so deep and it's so profound and I love it. So here we are.
And you know, I think it is an important message for people to understand. And it's funny because it's you and it's Brent. You know, you guys are both these ex-football players who have found your way into these deeply spiritual embodied practices that are, from a Western perspective, tend to be on the polar opposite ends of each other. Totally. And what you each have brought into it is what you each have brought to it is unique to each of you. And I think one of the things that I've watched unfold over these last, you know, close to 10 years is this deepening evolution of an experience that you're having in your own studentship. You know, you are someone who I think you and I always have related to each other because we're both eternal students. You know, there's always this opportunity for something. There's that just this curiosity for wanting to learn more and absorb more, because then that gets to be the offering. And I see that coming to fruition in your new series, Alchemy. And what I see coming to fruition, and I want to talk about this new series that's coming out tomorrow, which is so exciting. I see coming to fruition the beautiful combination of your lifelong expertise as someone who understands the human body, but also as now someone who has done extensive personal investigation and ongoing study of the spirit. And that is inclusive of breath work. That is inclusive of all of the elements of nature. And what that seems to me to speak to is also a deepening of your own connection to your heritage and to where you come from. And you're really bringing that forward in these classes. And I think it's important, you know, there's a lot that we talk about in terms of right now in this world that we live in about cultural appropriation, and for people to really understand this is who you are, you know, this is where you come from, the instruments that you're bringing in, the reasons that you're playing them at the end of class. You know, this is something I'm so excited for people to experience. Mychal plays a different instrument at the end of every class in this series, and it is powerful. And it comes from a place that is deeply rooted, not just in him, but to the ancestors and to the generations and to the wisdom traditions that stand behind him. So talk to us about Alchemy. What is this new series? How many classes are in it? How long are people going to be practicing each day, just so they understand the basics? But maybe more importantly than that, why did you create this series and what do you hope people get from it?
Great questions. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that reflection as well. Yeah, I mean, the inspiration for the class, I think you touched on it a little bit, was like the deepening of my own spiritual practices. And I wrote about it in the recent little blog piece. Was just, you know, earlier this year, I was going on a retreat. I was supporting a retreat in the Yucatan in Mexico, and every day was correlated to an element. And as I was preparing for that retreat and the classes that I was going to offer, I was also brainstorming as to the series that I was going to create. And so immediately, once, you know, I had a couple of calls about the retreat, and I was just like, oh my gosh, yeah, let's make this series like a dedication to the elements. And how can I make each one of these practices, how can I connect each one of these practices with the four elements of earth, air, water, and fire? And so that was like kind of like the foundation of it. And that was the first spark of inspiration, was this retreat to Mexico. And it's called the Ancient Path Collective. And we're going to be, you know, with some elders of ancient Mexican and also Mayan lineage. And I was really looking forward to being on this retreat because I knew that I was going to be surrounded by so much wisdom, and also really importantly, that my mom was going to be there too, and that she was going to be able to really witness and experience this side of me that I've stepped into more so over the last few years. And I knew that it was going to be healing in so many different kinds of ways, especially with Ashley, my partner, being there too, and them getting to connect as well. And so that was kind of the first little seeds of inspiration for this series. And so, you know, we talked about like, okay, the exact formatting of like X minutes per classes, how many classes, this and that. And so we decided that there were going to be 4 30-minute asana practices, and between each one of those asana practices, there were going to be 10-minute classes to do different types of meditation and pranayama practices that were kind of uniquely special to myself, that I've implemented over the years and that I felt connected to. And so wanted to start the first class off with what felt like the most, I don't want to say the most important, but like, all right, let's start off with the earth practice. Okay, and so as I did that, I was like, okay, what kind of postures, what kind of movement, what kind of words can I put in there that are going to help connect the brain and the body to not just the earth on the floor, but also the earth and the meat and the meat suit within every single one of us. Like, how can I set the tone for this with this first practice? Like, let's get super grounded. And as I was thinking about the series as well, and I was thinking about the elements and like, how can I really make this unique? The musical instruments was like, oh my gosh, yeah, that can be another layer that I add into this whole series. And so when I thought about the earth, I was like, I've had a bison, like a handheld bison drum for the last 3-4 years that I absolutely love. And that was kind of like the first musical instrument that I got on my own, and feel super connected to that. And just like, medicine of the bison is a very earthly type of animal. And so I was like, yes, I'll do I'm going to play that at the end of the class. And then when I was thinking about the air class, the flute, the Native American flute came up, and then the fire class, the rattle was just like shaking things up, and then the water with the ocean drum. And so then these little, it was like as soon as I got started like thinking about the layout of the series and the classes, like things started to come in, and more layers got added to it, and different like affirmations, that I wanted to also put in the classes as well, depending on the element and what element correlates to what specific chakra. And then affirmations that are also connected to those specific chakras. And so implementing those in the beginning of the practice, implementing those at the end of the practice. And so it's like once the ball got rolling, it was just like the snowball effect, which was really fun. And that's I feel like usually the way things work with me when I'm creating something. It's like, all right, let me get that first little like nudge off of the hill, and then things are gonna take course. So yeah, the asana practices are 30 minutes each, and each one of those is connected to an element: earth, air, water, fire. And then the 10-minute practices between each one of those classes, again, are different types of meditation and pranayama practices that kind of correlate with the class before or afterwards as well. And I think, for the student, you can obviously feel free to, do one of those 10-minute practices like right after you do the 30-minute class. It doesn't have to be on the next day. It can be. And what I was thinking about when I created it too was like, all right, a day, let's say Monday is the first practice of earth. Okay, cool. And then the next day is just, all you have to worry about is, or not worry about, but all you have to do is just breathe and meditate, and not so much do anything physical, because I wanted to, my thought process in that was encouraging people to take a day of rest. And now rest doesn't mean just like lounging on the couch. Like you can still, my rest days look like walking around the neighborhood sometimes, or doing the stairs sometimes, or doing some gentle yoga or whatever. But just wanted to kind of like have there be a little bit of we're going to work physically, and then we're going to support the body and relax, and then we'll work and then relax, and then we'll work and then relax. But obviously to the student, if you want to add, the 10-minute meditation pranayama practice right after you do the 30-minute practice, like feel free to. And I also, when I was thinking about this series too, in the future, when I'm filming some classes, in the next year or two, I want to elaborate on every single one of these practices, because you can only do so many things within 30 minutes, but down the road, the opportunity comes to film a 45-minute or 60-minute class. All right, this is going to be earth part 2, or this is going to be water part 2, or one of the meditation or pranayama practices that we did, we're going to elaborate on those even more. And so I wanted to, especially with the meditation pranayama practices, is at least open the door to some of these practices that might be new to people. Some of them people maybe have done for many, many years, but some of them I'm sure are going to be completely new. So to at least give like the first dose of these different types of practices, again, that are kind of near and dear to my heart. And so with the course as well, my hope is that everybody throughout the duration of the month, everybody feels and deepens their connection with the elements within their own physical body, the waters within their body, the air breathing in and out of the lungs, the earth, the meat suit, the fire, the inner fire that's within every single one of us, and just an opportunity to deepen that connection. And something that I talk about too, I think in the intro, is that throughout this series, another way to supplement and support yourself is to go outside, spend like, 2, 3, 5, maybe even 10 minutes outside, to take your shoes off, to step your feet on the earth, whether that's the grass or, whatever surface that you have that's available to you, depending on where you're living. But to just take a few moments to ground and to earth, because there's something that is So, this is something that I've learned over the years of deepening the spiritual practices and learning from people who are very, very, very connected to ancient traditions, is like the intelligence of the earth is so profound. And I think it's so much more than what we think it is to be. And so much so that we stand on the earth with our bare feet, and something between the electromagnetic field of the earth and our bodies, there's shifts that happen, and there are profound shifts that can happen in that. Like the earth is so amazing at absorbing things within our entire being, all of the bodies, all the energetic, physical, mental, emotional, all those bodies. It can pull those things out, and then we simply take deep breaths in, and now we're breathing in fresh life force that we can just, it's abundant, and also just taking a moment to appreciate the simple things like that, to be able to deeply expand and breathe in our lungs, to take a moment to, I think the little clip went on today on Interdimensions Instagram post, but about like being mindful about how you're consuming your water and how you're consuming your food, and these are all things that I'm sharing with people because they're things that have really changed my life. Like, I'm much more conscious about how I'm consuming my food. I'm much more conscious about how I'm drinking my water, because I wasn't taught these things when I was younger, but I've had direct experiences now where I've really felt how much of a difference that makes, and just the type of appreciation that you can show by slowing certain things down, simply by taking a moment to even just bless your water before you consume it and give thanks to your water. You don't have to use words, but even just holding it to your heart before taking a sip of water, and just like that. To the outsider, that might seem like something that's weird because we're not really taught those simple things. But what it is at the end of the day is it's an act of gratitude, and gratitude is one of the most powerful places and states that we can possibly be in. And I find, at least for myself, when I'm in a state of gratitude and when I'm taking time to thank the elements, for example, thank the water before I'm drinking it, thank and pray over the food before I consume it. When I stand on the floor, when I go in the ocean, thanking the water, thanking the sand, like taking those little bits and moments to do so, like, I just feel so much better. And it really doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. Some people can think I'm a weirdo. It doesn't matter. I feel great, and I feel connected when I'm doing those things. And when I observe elders and I see them doing those same kind of things, that's the inspiration behind it, because I see how connected they are to everything and everyone around us in the elements. And it's just like, I admire that so much. And it's like, that's what I want to embody. And so, yeah, I guess the inspiration really at the end of the day was just everything that's around us, and having a deeper appreciation for this beautiful planet that we get to call home, and also this beautiful experience that we get to have as human beings in our bodies, because we're made up of all of these elements and so much more. So at the end of the day, I hope that everybody can just come into it inspires a little more gratitude for the simple things in life.
I just have to take a breath because that was so beautiful. There were so many beautiful takeaways from that. Shout out to those of us that were raised on Hot Pockets and Cheetos, me being one of them, and change is possible. I know for myself that when I first started doing yoga, all of a sudden I was like, I'm craving a green juice. And that was the weirdest experience for me to have. It was not, the way that I was raised, but the deeper I got into my body and the more that I slowed down and the more that I tuned into all of the things that you're talking about, I realized that we are always practicing something, whether we're aware of it or not. But so often what we're practicing is our conditioning. And the more we practice, the more we're able to step into that dimension of awareness and then come back to choice. And one of the things that I want to just double click on that Mychal spoke about here, especially as it is in regards to this upcoming series, there is a day of rest purposely inserted into the cadence of this series, because something that we are missing in this culture is integration. You know, we are so quick to go to the next thing. And I am the first person to participate in this. And you see it even in some of the programs on Interdimension TV, 108 days, 45 days, and you know, your go day 1, day 2, day 3. And then there's a pause day, and those are inserted there on purpose. And so often people will come to us and they'll say, I did the program, but I skipped the restorative yoga, or I didn't do the bonus practices. I skipped the meditation. No judgment about that. I want to be super clear. No judgment about that. But let's get curious. You know, why are we so afraid to hit pause? You know, why are we so afraid to miss a day where our calories, you know, burned aren't being calculated? Your health is important, your heart health, your vitality, your strength, your endurance, your stamina, all of that is important to your overall longevity. And equally so are the moments where you pause to integrate the content that you're taking in. So do Mychal's series in the way that makes the most sense for you, but also that first day where you work on the earth element, and then the next day where you sit down and you have that breath work and you have that meditation. It's an opportunity for you to really take in, what does this mean to you? So many of us are disconnected from the elements. You know, we're working inside of buildings with fluorescent lighting. We're not getting out into nature. This is the perfect time of year for this series, because mostly where we are located in the world, you don't have the excuse that you can't get outside for a little while at least the weather is permissible. So really want to encourage, when you have that moment, which is probably inevitable for everybody, where the day of rest comes and you think like, I'm going to skip it, or I'm just going to like push myself a little harder, just get curious about that and ask yourself why. And maybe the thing that you're being called to do is sit with that discomfort, because you want to talk about how you're going to grow that window of tolerance. You want to talk about how you're going to grow your resiliency. It's going to be by sitting on those days and slowing down when your mind is telling you that it is the last thing that you should be doing. The other thing I want to touch on is that Mychal had the concept for this series, and he called me because we were going to do 20-minute class, you know, 7 20-minute classes. And he reached out and I knew exactly what we were going to be talking about. And this is the thing that makes Interdimension different. And I don't think we talk about it enough. Interdimension is founded by yoga teachers and it is run by yoga teachers. So when our teachers come to us and say, I'm evolving, I have an idea, you know what, I want to do something really different, we're supporting that evolution. We're not a corporate entity that is just trying to put content out that, you know, gets the best ranking in the data. We want to serve our members, and equally so, we know that those of you that are here today, that are listening to this conversation, that are part of this community, are best served by also serving our teachers and honoring their growth and honoring their evolution and honoring their studentship to make sure that you guys get the benefit of that. So I feel like that's something we don't talk about enough, that, you know, Travis and here I am, I'm sitting at our kitchen table, you know, because it's cooler in our house than it is out in our little back office where it's like 100 degrees today. We're the co-CEOs, you know, we're doing the day in, day out work here. And that work is supporting Mychal. It's supporting all of the other teachers to come in and deliver something to you guys that doesn't just come from the body, and it doesn't just come from the head. It comes from, as you heard Mychal speaking, his entire lived experience. And so thank you, Mychal, for sharing all of that, because I think that there were some really important takeaways from what you just touched on. I know that people are always, tight for time, and we're, coming into this conversation for an hour. I want to hold space for your questions. For those of you that are here with us live today, I want to give you the time and the opportunity to share your stories with us. Ask Mychal or myself any questions that you have, because this is a community conversation. Half of this time has to be, dedicated to us being in contact. So Christy's going to come back on. And if anybody has a question, you can raise your little hand icon and you can come on live, and Christy will turn on your video. Or if you prefer not to come on video and talk with myself and Mychal, you can pop your question into the Q&A. So if anybody has any questions, raise your hand or jump into the Q&A, because we would love to hear from you today.
Yeah.
We'll give it a couple minutes.
Yeah, great. Yeah, and touching on that point of taking those days off, I know for myself, it was really hard to do for many years of my life, especially playing competitive sports. And that's something that I've definitely noticed in gym culture and just in the collective. And also, being in a big city of LA where health and wellness is it's almost like the epicenter. I feel like there's, we live in a society that's slightly addicted to working and stimulation, constant stimulation, whether it's stimulating our body through exercise or stimulating through media and all these different kinds of ways. Like it's a lot. It really is a lot. And the 2 times over the past couple of years that I've taken time to step outside of society and go, deep into the Amazon or up in Northern California to completely go off the grid for a week or a month, those times of getting quiet and still initially, especially the first time, it was uncomfortable, but quickly I fell in love with being able to do that, because I felt so much peace and so much calmness and so much tranquility. And on top of that, I felt like I could listen so much better to what my spirit, what my soul was needing, because I wasn't inundated with so many distractions and so much pollution of, of lights, of media, of food, of this, of that. It was just so clear. And I love being able to do that, which was part of the reason why I wanted to go to the Amazon, to go off grid for a month and a half, was just another opportunity to really, really go deep so that I could listen and so that I could slow down, which was, it was life-changing. Slow down.
Love those words.
Yeah.
No hand raises yet, Christy?
No, not yet.
Well, and just to touch on that too, something that we do internally here, within Interdimension, but our home and our family and our business, is we support everybody in taking retreat. Travis just went on retreat last weekend. And that is so important. I'm going on retreat in September for the first time since Willow was born, as a student, getting to go on retreat. And that is essential. It's essential to everybody. And we talk about this oftentimes for those of you who have been on retreats with myself and with Travis. It's often one of the things that we start retreat with. But it is this reminder that retreat has existed through all of time as an important opportunity for us to touch back into what is essential, what is most important. I was listening to the teacher Adyashanti speak this morning, and he's a teacher who I love and has so much wisdom. And it was at the start of a retreat, a talk he was giving, and he was saying, what you'll come and you'll realize about your problems, well, you don't actually have any problems. And the whole audience starts laughing. And he said, I'm not here to teach you that, but you might realize that you actually don't have any real problems. And I thought that that was so powerful, because we get so inserted in our life and the things that we're doing, and we make problems, and then we step away for a period of time. And look, as Jack Kornfield, our teacher, always says, you got to remember your social security number. You still have to be a human being functioning in the world. And we start to have that perspective that is tapping us back into what is most essential. So thank you for touching on that, Mychal. Really, there's nobody here today who has a question for Mychal? You know, you can.
We have actually one question.
All right.
Great. So I'll read this out loud. Not sure this is appropriate based on today's conversation, but here's my question. Do you have any recommendations on how to start back into a regular practice after injury? I know listening to your body is one of the best answers, but just wondered if any of you had some advice.
Do you want to go first, Lauren?
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, intuition is so important. That is something that I think for many of us has been taken away. And I speak for myself personally, especially as someone who came to this practice as a heady sort of person. I'm really quick to give someone outside of me authority. You know, like, oh, it's a teacher who has studied this type of modality will be able to give me better advice than I know in my own body. You know, one of the biggest things is taking back your power in a way. I'm always hesitant of that word power, but yes, trusting yourself, trusting what the messages that your body is giving you is essential in rehabbing from injury. At the same time, you know, yoga teachers are not physical therapists. We often get put into that bucket, unless of course you are like Christine, who's on our platform, who is a doctor of physical therapy. But most of us are not physical therapists. So if you are rehabbing from an injury and you are given physical therapy to do it. You know, too often people get bored of their physical therapy and like these little movements and they give up on their homework. Do your physical therapy, because there is an intelligence there to building back up strength in slow ways that will then allow you to move forward. I think about several years ago, my mom broke her leg in 14 places skiing. It was a terrifying moment in time. She was fine. But I was teaching a restorative yoga class, and then this text message comes up on my phone as I went to change the music that said, "I'm fine, being airlifted back down to Los Angeles," you know, and you're like, but the break went down into her knee. And one of the things that she had to learn through physical therapy was that difference between pain and discomfort. And sometimes that's a really shady line. And so we have to build that relationship to, is this painful or is this uncomfortable? And yoga teaches us that. Sitting meditation teaches us that. It's like, wow, I can be really deeply, incredibly uncomfortable, and I can be okay at the same time. I can be with this. And at the end of the day, you're the only one that can answer that. But as she moved through physical therapy, rehabbing that injury, working with an expert to gauge, is this appropriate or not appropriate? She's stuck with it and is 100% back to her yoga practice, traveling the world with us, running after a 3.5-year-old. You know, she is more vibrant maybe than ever, running every morning. So, you know, keeping that time that it takes to get back to strength without hurrying and rushing it is so important. But Mychal, I feel like you might have some things there that are far beyond my expertise in that area.
That was great. That was great. And the example of your mom, it reminded me of my dad, who he had a really gnarly injury in his knee a couple of years ago, and the whole rehab and protocol that he was supposed to do, and did it, and it was all really, really great. And then I look on my own personal experience of like rehab with certain things, and that was actually one of the things why I ended up leaving school, because I was so frustrated with how poorly and how basic the rehab and the therapy protocols were, because I knew that there was more, and I could feel that, and that was something that I had to take into my own hands. Now, that's something that I don't recommend for everybody. But I think the first thing, you know, if you're coming back from an injury and looking like, okay, how and where do I get back started, is first of all, just like looking at the injury. What did you injure? How did you injure it? What are you able to still do at full capacity? And what are some of the things that are limiting? You know, like say, for example, if you if you broke your wrist, if you broke your right wrist, obviously there's things you're not going to be able to do with your right hand and maybe even arm or wrist for a certain extended period of time. But at the same time, you could still do everything with your left hand and arm. You could still work your whole lower body and your core. You could still work a lot of these other pieces of the chain. So I think it's like, okay, taking first an examination of what's injured and how did you injure it? How badly did you injure it? And then finding things that you can do movement wise that aren't going to cause you any pain. Because like you said, if it's painful or if it's like really hurting, causing pain, you want to avoid it. But it's another thing if it's just uncomfortable. And I think that, yeah, that line between discomfort and pain gets very, very blurred. And I think that's also something that I've noticed in just the collective society is that like a lot of what is really discomfort, people seem to think that it's like, oh no, it's pain, I can't do it, I gotta avoid it. It's like, I don't know if that's really causing pain, that, I'm not in your body having the experience, but getting really like just in touch with that scale of pain and discomfort. But I think that's where I would start off with. And then also like when it comes to implementing and integrating movement, things that you can obviously do and things that are also fun to do as well, things that you enjoy doing that you can still do. For example, like again, if you broke your right wrist, all right, maybe you used to play basketball as a child or in high school, like you can still dribble with your left hand, that can even look like rehab. You can still use your legs, you can still practice your coordination and also have a fun time doing it, because when it comes to movement, when we are having fun and enjoying it, it's not like, it doesn't turn into training, which is one of the reasons why I love like a practice like animal flow, is because that for me, I don't feel like I'm training. I don't feel like I'm doing sets and repetitions. I just feel like I'm getting to play and roll around on the floor and do a bunch of different movement patterns that have a byproduct of actually being really good for my body too. So I think that's where I would start. I hope that answers that question.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. We'll do one last check to see if anybody who's here with us today live, if you want to share a story or if you have a question for Mychal or myself, and it doesn't have to be, related necessarily to this conversation. This is for you guys, this is our time to connect and just to remember that if you have a question that you're feeling some hesitation around or something that you want to share, that's usually the juiciest place to come from. You're not the only one. And I guarantee you that somebody could benefit from you going into that vulnerable place. So if anybody has a question before we start to wrap to a close, let us know. And Chris, what?
I'm just looking at the names of people on here. Paul, I see Paul on there. Excited to see you this weekend. Well, Kim, Kathy, Fanya, Emily, Diane. Any questions?
And I think, just while we wait and see, and Christy, interrupt me if somebody raises their hand, something, Mychal, that you touched on that is of the utmost importance, especially when it comes to injury. And Dr. Peter Attia writes about this pretty extensively in his new book, Outlive, which I cannot recommend highly enough. It's that injury, especially as we get older, that takes us out of using our bodies, that is the biggest cause of early death. Not to be like scary for anybody, but right, we get a little injury and then it keeps us from doing the thing that we love, like going out into our garden and gardening, or getting onto our bicycle and bicycle riding. And that trajectory downhill, because if we're immobile or we decide that we're immobile, like Mychal said, because we're not doing the things that we love or the things that we used to love. And so we stop using our bodies as much. We stop having a sense of play in our bodies. Those are the things that can really take us out of a high sense of health and remove us from a life of not just vitality, but also longevity. So it is taking a really close look at when I have this injury, depending at the age that I'm at, am I doing the things that I need to be doing so that I can get back to using my body? Because that is the thing that keeps us alive and vital for the fullness of our lifespan and our health span. So it is really important to be honest with ourselves about that. Well, I think if there are no more questions, we're gonna just start to bring it to a close and give everybody gratitude. But one of the things that we do here at Interdimension with these conversations, they're completely free to anybody who wants to join, Interdimension member or not, is that it's a moment of service. In yoga, it's what we call karma yoga or seva. And we ask each teacher and each person who comes into these conversations to bring with them an organization, a nonprofit, or a charity that they're wanting to bring love and attention to. And so for Mychal, something that he is deeply passionate about is the Love Tower at Asha. Their website is the lovetower@asha.com. And Christy will put that into the chat box. So if you want to learn more, you can. But Mychal, do you want to briefly just tell us a little bit about the Love Tower? Because it's such an incredible project.
Yeah. And so let's start with the origin story of me even finding out about this project. It was actually the first conversation and time that I met Ashley and my beloved, and she was telling me about, we were exchanging about some of the things that we're working on, and both just so very much intrigued. And she started talking to me about the Love Tower and, talking about the Love Tower project and this, and then they're going to build a monument. And I was like, what do you mean you're going to build? Like, I was trying to wrap my head around, like, what's this going to look like? What is it going to be? And so that was like 2 years ago. And to reflect on like that conversation that we had and what I imagined it to be and to where it is right now, and to see some of the renderings and just how much momentum has happened and how much progress has happened with this project is really, really cool. And so basically what the Love Tower is it's going to be a huge monument. They're calling it the 8th, or maybe it's the 9th wonder of the world, because there's a lot of debate around what the 8th wonder of the world is. But it is going to be a huge physical monument in Puerto Rico that is a dedication to love and expressing all forms of love through music, through heart-enhanced music meditations, through different programs for adults and children. There's also going to be a sacred library there. There's going to be an amphitheater over there. There's going to be I think it's an 8-story a waterfall with like a double helix staircase in the middle, where there's going to be water flowing with everybody putting their intentions, their positive and loving intentions into that water. That's also going to be running down a quartz crystal pyramid, which, if you know anything about rose quartz, very much connected to the heart. And one of the cool ways, one of the unique ways in which we're doing fundraising for the project is called 143, as in numerology. 143 is another way of saying I love you. And so with a $143 donation to the project, you can choose to get a loved one's name inscribed on the inside of the tower. So for the first 1 million people that decide to donate $143, say, for example, I could get my grandma's name inscribed on there. I can get my dog's name inscribed on there. It's basically a dedication to a loved one. And that is one of the ways that they're getting the whole world to be a part of this project, not just 1 or 2 very wealthy people or philanthropists that wanted to just leave some monument behind for people. Like, this is going to be a really, and I think when it comes to its full fruition and it's basically turned on, like, this is going to be such a huge amphitheater, and it's the word I'm looking for, just a huge amplifier of love. And the more that I've learned too, just about how powerful our intentions and our words and our thoughts are, when we can gather mass amount of people all in the name of love and putting their conscious attention to meditating together and creating and dropping people from their minds to their hearts, it's going to create a huge electromagnetic field that I think that not only the world, but the universe is going to feel. And there's a lot of people out there that are proving that when we do drop from our thinking mind to our heart, that we create a, up to 30-meter electromagnetic field, that everything around us can subtly or more than subtle feel. And so you can imagine what, gathering lots and lots of people who are dropping into the same state from these music enhanced meditations, and what that's good, the kind of ripple effect that that's going to have. And they're also going to be working a lot with the community in Puerto Rico as well to give back to the community in lots of different types of ways. So that's a little bit about the project, and I have the special opportunity and the privilege of creating some of these programs, especially when it comes to the movement and the meditation programs as well. So I'm super excited to create some of those and to be able to share some of those things with the world as well.
And for people to know, it is a 501c3, so you can check out the organization and learn more. I also want to let everybody know that our next conversation is going to be on August 21st with Erin Rose Ward. She has a new audio yoga nidra series coming out, and our conversation is going to take place at 2:00 that day. So it's a little bit of a different time frame. And we're going to get all into not just yoga nidra, but this current topic that is such a hot button topic of non-sleep deep rest, which is of course the trendy scientific term for yoga nidra. We're going to talk about non-sleep deep rest and really how impactful this is to your well-being, to your nervous system, and why we're so excited to do this conversation and this series with her. But we're also going to do the next week a conversation between me and Travis. So you're going to get two conversations in August. I'm going to be sitting down and interviewing Travis on August 29th at 10 a.m. So you're going to get two conversations 2 weeks in a row, back to back. One that I think is going to be highly educational, and one in a format that we haven't done before between myself and Travis. So we hope that you will come back and enjoy these free conversations with us next month. Mychal, as always, being in your presence is nourishing, and I just am so grateful for you and everything you have brought to the Inner Dimension community. And we are so excited for everybody to check out his new series, Alchemy, which will be out on Inner Dimension TV, the website, and the apps tomorrow morning. So, be sure to share with us. Thank you, Mychal. Thank you, everybody who joined us live and watching the recording. You are our hearts, you're part of us, and we're so glad to share this space with you.